In the dim glow of computer screens, beneath the hum of machines that spoke in the quiet language of binary, a revolution was brewing, one that would one day connect every corner of the globe. The internet, as we know it today, began not with a single spark, but with a constellation of ideas, driven by dreamers who dared to imagine a world where information could flow freely, instantly, between people who might never meet. Hello and welcome to The Other Side Stories. Here, we travel beyond the usual headlines to explore the untold tales of world history, mysteries, turning points, and hidden connections that shaped our planet. If you love discovering how the past still echoes in our present, you're in the right place. Let's uncover the other side of history together. The birth of the internet is not just a story of technology, it's a story of humanity. It's about the relentless curiosity of scientists, the urgency of the Cold War, and the unquenchable desire to connect minds across distance. To understand how this invisible web came to exist, we have to journey back to a time before smartphones, before Wi-Fi, before computers had even learned to talk to one another. It all began with a single question: how can machines communicate? The 1950s were an age of tension and innovation. The Cold War had divided the world into two ideological spheres, and fear of nuclear conflict loomed large. In 1957, when the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite, it sent shockwaves through the United States. Suddenly, the heavens, once considered unreachable, belonged to someone else. America's scientific pride took a blow, and in response, the U.S. government created ARPA, the Advanced Research Projects Agency, under the Department of Defense. ARPA's mission was bold: to ensure that the United States would never again be technologically caught off guard. It was here, within the sterile offices of ARPA, that the seeds of the internet would quietly be planted. By the early 1960s, computers were becoming powerful enough to perform complex calculations, but they were isolated machines, massive, expensive, and limited to individual labs or institutions. If scientists wanted to share information, they had to physically mail magnetic tapes or punch cards to each other. The idea of real-time communication between computers seemed almost fantastical. Yet for one visionary scientist, that challenge became an obsession. His name was J.C.R. Licklider, a psychologist turned computer scientist with a mind that saw beyond the limits of his era. Licklider, who worked at MIT, believed that computers could become tools for communication rather than mere calculators. In 1962, he wrote a memo describing a galactic network, a connected system of computers through which anyone could access data and programs from anywhere in the world. It was an idea decades ahead of its time. Licklider's vision inspired ARPA's leadership, and soon he was invited to lead the Information Processing Techniques Office, or IPTO, a branch within ARPA dedicated to exploring computer networking. He gathered a small team of brilliant minds, men like Lawrence Roberts, Leonard Kleinrock, and Robert Taylor, each with different skills, but united by a common dream: to make computers talk. The first major breakthrough came from Kleinrock, who introduced the concept of packet switching. Until then, most communication systems relied on circuit switching, like traditional telephone lines, where a dedicated connection was established between 2 points for the duration of the call. Packet switching, however, was revolutionary. It involved breaking information into small, discrete packets, sending them separately through various routes, and reassembling them at the destination. This method was not only efficient, it was resilient. Even if part of the network was damaged, the packets could still find alternate paths. In an age shadowed by the threat of nuclear war, this property was invaluable. A decentralized network meant that communication could survive even if some parts of the system were destroyed. By 1966, Lawrence Roberts at ARPA had been tasked with turning theory into reality. The goal? To create a network that connected multiple computers across different universities. The project was named ARPANET. The first 4 nodes of ARPANET were simple by today's standards. UCLA, Stanford Research Institute, UC Santa Barbara, and the University of Utah. Yet in 1969, when the first message was sent from UCLA to Stanford, it marked the beginning of something extraordinary. The message was supposed to read login, but only the first two letters, L and O, got through before the system crashed. LO, a fitting start to a network that would one day say hello to the entire world. Though primitive, ARPANET worked. It was the first network to use packet switching on a large scale, and it demonstrated that computers could indeed share data across great distances. Researchers could now log into remote machines, send messages, and exchange files. What had once been isolated silos of computation were now linked in a growing web of collaboration. The 1970s saw this network expand and evolve, but with growth came complexity. As more nodes joined, different institutions began developing their own networking protocols, unique rules for how data was formatted and transmitted. These systems couldn't easily communicate with one another. The dream of a global network of networks required a universal language. That's when two men, Vinton Cerf and Robert Kahn, proposed a groundbreaking solution, the Transmission Control Protocol and Internet Protocol, better known as TCP. TCP defined how data should be packaged, addressed, transmitted, and received, regardless of the underlying hardware or network design. It was elegant, adaptable, and scalable. In essence, it created a universal translator for digital communication. By 1983, ARPANET officially adopted TCP, marking what many consider the true birth of the modern Internet. Still, at that point, the network was mostly used by researchers, scientists, and the military. There were no web browsers, no emails for the public, no chat rooms or social media. Just text-based terminals and raw data streams. The Internet was a vast, invisible architecture of information, but it lacked a human face. That face would arrive a decade later with one quiet invention in a small Swiss lab. In 1989, a British scientist named Tim Berners-Lee, working at CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research, grew frustrated with how difficult it was for scientists to share information across different computer systems. His solution was to create a simple, standardized way to link documents through hypertext, a concept where one document could directly reference another through clickable links. He called it the World Wide Web. Berners-Lee's system was built on three essential components: HTML, which structured documents, HTTP, which allowed communication between servers and clients, and URLs, which provided addresses for every piece of content. In 1991, the World Wide Web was made publicly available, and suddenly, the Internet transformed from a network for scientists into a global platform for everyone. At first, few people noticed. Only a small number of users, mostly academics and hobbyists, had access. But soon, with the creation of early web browsers like Mosaic and Netscape Navigator, the web exploded into the mainstream. For the first time, ordinary people could browse digital pages, share images, and explore a new universe of information, all from their personal computers. The barriers between countries, cultures, and classes began to blur, replaced by a new kind of frontier, the digital one. Yet even as the web grew, few understood the magnitude of what was unfolding. In the early 1990s, less than 1% of the world was online. Within a few decades, that number would soar past 60%. The Internet would reshape economies, redefine politics, and revolutionize the way we think, work, and connect. But before we reach that point, it's important to remember how fragile those early days were, how easily it all could have failed. Behind every innovation lay countless setbacks, failed transmissions, clunky machines, and endless lines of code. Engineers worked through nights, often funded by small government grants, driven by nothing but curiosity and belief in something greater. When we look back at the birth of the Internet, we tend to imagine clean rooms, perfect machines, and flawless progress. In truth, it was chaos, an orchestra of trial and error, collaboration and competition, idealism and practicality. The people who built the Internet didn't just create technology, they built a new way of being human. They envisioned connection not as a luxury, but as a right. And in doing so, they laid the foundation for a revolution that would forever change our species' story. From ARPANET's first faltering low to the vast digital cosmos we navigate today, the journey of the internet mirrors our own evolution, our need to communicate, to share, to understand. As we step further into this story, we'll explore how the web grew beyond its creator's imagination, how it democratized information, and how it gave rise to both unity and division in a hyper-connected world. The early 1990s marked a quiet revolution. While the Cold War faded into history, a new frontier was opening, one without borders or armies, one built not on land but on lines of code. The internet was no longer just a scientific experiment. It was evolving into a living, breathing organism of human communication. But to the average person, the internet was still mysterious, something that existed behind glowing screens in government labs or university basements. Modems screamed and crackled as they tried to connect, carrying data over phone lines at the speed of patience. Yet even in its clumsy infancy, something magical was happening. For the first time, the world could talk to itself. The year 1993 was a turning point. That was when a young computer scientist named Mark Andreessen released Mosaic, the first graphical web browser. Before Mosaic, using the internet required typing cryptic commands into black terminals. Mosaic changed that. It made the web visual, clickable, and, most importantly, accessible. With Mosaic, the internet leapt from code to color. People could now see text, images, and links together on one screen. Universities rushed to adopt it, startups began to form, and soon a small company called Netscape was born. Netscape Navigator became the first browser for the masses, ushering in what historians now call the web boom. It's hard to overstate the excitement of that moment. Imagine a world where information, once locked away in libraries or institutions, suddenly became available at the click of a mouse. Anyone, anywhere, could create a page, publish their thoughts, and be heard. The barriers of geography, privilege, and even language began to crumble. But with freedom came chaos and opportunity. In the mid-1990s, a rush of entrepreneurs flooded the digital frontier. Companies with strange, almost playful names, Yahoo, Amazon, eBay, appeared almost overnight. Email became the new letter. Search engines began to map the infinite web of information. Online chat rooms buzzed with conversation. The internet was no longer just connecting computers, it was connecting people. Yet, beneath this explosion of innovation lay fragile infrastructure. The internet of the 1990s was a patchwork of servers, dial-up connections, and static pages. Websites loaded slowly, images took minutes to appear, and a single phone call could disconnect you from the online world. Still, people persevered because they felt something they'd never felt before: connection. It was the birth of digital community. For the first time in history, humans could form friendships, share ideas, and build movements without ever meeting face-to-face. Forums like Usenet and bulletin board systems became early social networks, places where strangers discussed everything from philosophy to programming to pop culture. In those digital corners, the seeds of modern social media were quietly being planted. Meanwhile, the world's economies were waking up to a new kind of gold rush. Investors saw potential in this strange new territory. Money began to pour into internet startups, many of which had little more than a clever idea and a .com domain. By the late 1990s, this frenzy reached fever pitch. The so-called .com boom was in full swing. Startups promised to revolutionize everything: shopping, news, music, travel. Investors threw billions into companies that existed mostly as web pages and dreams. And for a while, it worked. The Nasdaq soared, young entrepreneurs became millionaires overnight. The internet had turned into both a technological marvel and a cultural phenomenon. But revolutions rarely come with consequences. In March 2000, the bubble burst.
Investors realized that many of these internet companies had no real profits, only hype. Stocks crashed, fortunes evaporated, and thousands of startups vanished into digital dust. The dot-com crash became one of the most dramatic financial collapses in modern history. And yet, like a forest fire clearing old growth, it made room for something stronger to rise. Out of the ashes of the crash came a new generation of technology, firms that would reshape not just the internet, but the world itself. Among them were Google, founded in 1998, which brought order to the chaos with its revolutionary search algorithm, and a small company called PayPal, which pioneered digital payments and helped build the foundation for e-commerce. These weren't just websites, they were ecosystems, platforms that changed how people lived, worked, and thought. At the same time, another transformation was happening beneath the surface. The internet was moving away from static pages to interactive experiences. This era became known as Web 2.0. In the early 2000s, users stopped being mere consumers of content, they became creators. Websites like MySpace, Wikipedia, and YouTube invited people to participate, to share their voices, their art, their knowledge. The internet had become social. Social media began to define a new kind of identity, one that existed online as much as in the physical world. Friendster, then Facebook, brought together millions of people in virtual spaces. Twitter, born in 2006, turned short bursts of text into global conversations. The digital and the human were merging in ways that would have seemed impossible just decades earlier. Meanwhile, the technology that carried the internet was evolving just as quickly. Broadband replaced dial-up, making connections faster and more stable. Wi-Fi cut the cables, allowing the internet to move freely through air. Mobile phones, once used only for calls, began connecting to the web, turning the internet from a destination to a constant companion. By 2010, we were living in an online world. From buying groceries to finding love, from streaming music to launching revolutions, the internet had seeped into every aspect of daily life. It was no longer a separate space. It was the space. But with such rapid growth came profound questions. Could this new digital age bring humanity closer together, or would it divide us further apart? Could the same networks that spread knowledge also spread misinformation? Could freedom of information coexist with privacy, security, and truth? These were no longer theoretical debates. They were the new battlegrounds of the 21st century. Governments, corporations, and individuals began wrestling for control of the digital realm. Issues like surveillance, censorship, and data privacy became central concerns. The internet, once hailed as a tool of liberation, started to reveal its darker sides: addiction, manipulation, and the loss of solitude. And yet, even amid these challenges, the core promise of the internet endured: connection. Every email sent, every video uploaded, every tweet shared, all echoed the same ancient human desire: to reach out, to be understood, to leave a trace in the vast expanse of time and space. It's strange to think that something so intangible could reshape the physical world so completely. The internet doesn't exist in one place. It's everywhere and nowhere, a ghost that lives in cables beneath oceans, in satellites orbiting Earth, in signals that pulse through invisible airwaves. And behind it all, one simple truth remains: the internet was built by people for people. From Licklider's dream of a galactic network to Berners-Lee's web of hyperlinked pages, it has always been a reflection of us, our creativity, our flaws, our hunger for connection. The technology may evolve, but its essence is profoundly human. By the time the 2010s began, over 2 billion people were online. Children who had never known a world without Google or YouTube grew up fluent in the language of the internet. Nations built their economies around it, artists built their careers through it, communities found their voices within it. It was no longer just a tool, it was a way of life. And as it spread, it began to shape reality itself. News, politics, art, love all started to bend under the influence of this invisible force. Entire movements, like the Arab Spring, rose and spread through social media. Memes became the modern folklore of humanity. Information moved faster than governments could react. The internet had fulfilled Licklider's dream, but had also become something far greater and far more unpredictable than anyone could have imagined. The story of the internet, at its heart, is not just about technology. It's about how humanity learns to live with power, how we balance our genius for creation with our capacity for destruction. Every new innovation brings both light and shadow, connection and isolation. And as we journey deeper into this story, we'll explore how the internet became the central nervous system of our civilization, how it connects billions of minds, for better or worse, and how it continues to shape the destiny of our species in ways we're only beginning to understand.
By the time the internet reached the second decade of the 21st century, it had already woven itself into the fabric of everyday life. What once belonged to scientists and engineers had become as ordinary as electricity, an invisible pulse that powered the world. People woke up and checked their phones before even leaving bed. News traveled not through newspapers or television, but through social media feeds. The line between online and offline began to dissolve. Humanity had entered a new era, the age of constant connection. Yet behind the glow of screens and the simplicity of search bars, a silent complexity grew. The internet was no longer a single network. It was a vast ecosystem of algorithms, data, and invisible transactions happening every second. Every click, every like, every word typed into a search box became a piece of the digital self, stored somewhere, processed, analyzed, and sometimes sold. This was the dawn of big data. The more people connected, the more data flowed, billions of gigabytes every day. Tech companies realized that data was not just a byproduct, it was the most valuable resource in the world. It could predict behavior, target ads, shape elections, and even influence emotions. The internet had transformed from a tool of discovery into a mirror of human thought. Google refined its algorithms to learn what users wanted before they even asked. Facebook began mapping human relationships with mathematical precision. Amazon used patterns of purchases to anticipate what people would buy next. These digital giants became the architects of a new world, one where information meant power and those who controlled it shaped the future. The dreamers of the early internet had imagined a decentralized utopia where everyone had equal access to knowledge. But reality turned out to be more complicated. The web, once open and democratic, was now dominated by a handful of powerful corporations. The freedom to connect came at a cost, the surrender of privacy. And yet, people continued to share, to post, to upload. Because for all its risks, the internet offered something irresistible: belonging. Every person could carve a space in the digital universe, a page, a profile, a voice. Social media turned ordinary people into broadcasters, influencers, and storytellers. A teenager with a camera phone could reach millions. A single tweet could shake governments. A video uploaded from a small town could start a global movement. The power of connection had never been greater or more fragile. In the 2010s, we witnessed both the triumph and the turbulence of this new reality. The Arab Spring, a wave of protests across the Middle East, showed how social media could mobilize people, break censorship, and challenge power. But it also revealed how quickly misinformation could spread, how digital hope could turn to chaos. Hashtags became rallying cries. Online activism became real-world revolution. The internet was not just shaping the conversation, it was the conversation. Meanwhile, technology itself kept evolving at a dizzying pace. The rise of the smartphone had turned the internet into an extension of the human hand. The first iPhone, launched in 2007, was more than a device. It was a gateway. It placed the entire digital world into a pocket, ready to be touched, swiped, and tapped at any moment. Suddenly, everyone became connected all the time. The idea of being offline started to feel almost unnatural. Apps replaced websites. Instant messaging replaced emails. Cloud storage replaced hard drives. And soon, artificial intelligence began to quietly power it all,
learning from data, adapting, predicting, personalizing. By the mid-2010s, the internet had evolved into something the pioneers of ARPANET could never have imagined, a living, learning, thinking network. But as it grew smarter, it also grew more dangerous. Cybersecurity became a new kind of warfare. Hackers targeted banks, power grids, and even elections. Nations realized that battles of the future would not be fought with bombs, but with data. The internet, once built for openness and trust, had become a global battlefield. And yet, amid this complexity, one constant remained: the internet's power to connect hearts and minds. It connected families across continents. It allowed students in small villages to learn from teachers halfway around the world. It gave artists, writers, and dreamers a stage where the only limit was imagination. It democratized knowledge, amplified voices, and reshaped culture. Music, once bound to records and radios, now flowed freely through streaming services. Movies moved from theaters to screens we carried in our hands. Friendships that once required distance and patience could now exist instantly, bound by messages, emojis, and video calls. But in that endless connection, something subtle began to fade: the quiet spaces of thought. People no longer waited. They scrolled, they refreshed, they consumed. The internet, once a tool of curiosity, was becoming an engine of distraction. Algorithms, designed to keep users engaged, began shaping what people saw, read, and believed. Echo chambers formed. Truth became subjective. And the world started to fracture, not because of lack of connection, but because of too much of it. We had built a network that could unite the planet, yet we were using it to divide ourselves. Still, even as we wrestled with the consequences of our own creation, innovation pressed forward. The late 2010s brought the rise of new technologies that would redefine what the internet could be. Blockchain introduced the idea of decentralized trust, digital ledgers that no single entity could control. Cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin challenged the very foundation of money. And soon, people began to imagine a future internet that returned to its original vision: open, secure, and free. At the same time, another quiet revolution was taking place: the Internet of Things. Everyday objects, from refrigerators to cars, from watches to thermostats, began connecting to the internet. The physical world was merging with the digital one, blurring the line between human and machine. Our cities became smart, our homes responsive, our devices interconnected. It was both astonishing and unsettling. The same internet that once linked computers now linked lives. By 2020, nearly 5 billion people were online. The internet was no longer a marvel. It was the bloodstream of civilization. Yet its growth came with an unexpected test: a global pandemic. When COVID-19 spread across the world, the internet became humanity's lifeline. Offices turned into Zoom screens. Classrooms became virtual. Concerts, weddings, even funerals moved online. In isolation, the digital world became the real world. For the first time, nearly everyone on the planet experienced what it meant to live through the internet, to work, learn, and love within its boundaries. And while the pandemic brought pain and uncertainty, it also revealed something profound: that our ability to connect was not just a convenience, but a survival mechanism. We realized that the internet had become the collective nervous system of humanity, a system that pulsed with both information and emotion, bridging the distance between loneliness and belonging. But as the dust settled, the world began to ask difficult questions. What kind of internet do we want for the future? One ruled by corporations and algorithms, or one by community and ethics? Can we design technology that respects privacy, nurtures creativity, and unite rather than divide? These questions define the internet's modern age. Because while the first half-century of its life was about building connections, the next half will be about defining what those connections mean. As we move forward, one truth becomes increasingly clear: the internet is not a machine, it's a mirror. It reflects the best and worst of who we are. Its evolution is our evolution. Its dangers are our own. From a few flickering terminals in 1969 to billions of smartphones in 2025, it has carried our stories, our fears, our dreams. It has become the stage upon which human history now unfolds in real time. And the story isn't over. In the next chapter, we'll look at where the internet might go from here, into virtual worlds, into artificial intelligence, into the very fabric of human identity itself. The web that once connected machines now seeks to connect consciousness. The next revolution isn't about computers learning to think. It's about what happens when humanity learns to coexist with its own creation. As the 2020s unfolded, humanity stood on the edge of another great digital transformation. The internet, once a collection of networks, was evolving into something far more immersive, more intelligent, and more intertwined with human existence than ever before. What had begun as a way for computers to communicate had become a way for consciousness to connect. The first wave of this transformation came through artificial intelligence. Though the concept had existed for decades, it was in the 2020s that AI truly merged with the internet, learning from the vast ocean of data humans had poured into it. Search engines no longer just provided results, they understood questions. Voice assistants began to anticipate needs before they were spoken. Images, sounds, and even human speech could be generated by machines that had learned to mimic creativity itself. For the first time, the internet began to create as well as connect. Social platforms, too, evolved under the influence of AI. Algorithms didn't just show users content, they shaped reality by curating what people saw, believed, and valued. The internet was no longer a neutral mirror, it was a sculptor, molding perception itself. And yet, amid all this, a new frontier was opening, a world within the world, the metaverse. The term had once belonged to science fiction, but now it was becoming tangible. Virtual reality and augmented reality began merging physical and digital existence. People could step into three-dimensional spaces, attend concerts, explore cities, or even build their own worlds, all from within the network. The internet was no longer confined to screens. It surrounded us, enveloped us, and invited us in. Corporations envisioned the metaverse as the next great economic frontier. Tech giants raced to build platforms where people could work, play, and socialize entirely online. Virtual real estate was bought and sold. Avatars became extensions of self. In this new world, identity was fluid, and imagination had no boundaries. But for all its potential, the metaverse raised questions as old as humanity itself. Who are we when freed from the limits of our bodies? What does reality mean when the virtual becomes indistinguishable from the physical? As we explored new worlds of pixels and code, we were also redefining what it meant to be human. Meanwhile, another silent revolution was happening on the edges of the internet, one that sought to return it to its original promise, decentralization. The invention of blockchain technology had introduced a new kind of internet, Web 3, where users could own their data, verify truth without intermediaries, and build systems that were transparent and secure. Cryptocurrencies, once dismissed as experiments, became instruments of global finance. Non-fungible tokens, or NFTs, transformed the idea of ownership in the digital realm. For the first time, art, music, and ideas could carry unique digital signatures, proof of authenticity in an age of replication. Creators gained new power, but speculation and hype often overshadowed genuine innovation. The internet, ever unpredictable, had once again become a stage for both revolution and illusion. Through it all, one thing remained constant: the internet's ability to evolve faster than society could fully understand it. As technologies like 5G spread across the globe, connectivity became nearly instantaneous. Latency, the delay between thought and transmission, began to vanish. The internet was no longer distant, it was immediate. From smart homes to self-driving cars, from wearable health sensors to remote surgery, the network wasn't just connecting people, it was connecting everything. And that brought humanity closer than ever to something extraordinary: the idea of a global brain. In the 1960s, thinkers like Licklider had dreamed of a man-computer symbiosis, where humans and machines would work together as partners in thought. 60 years later, that dream was taking shape. Artificial intelligence learned from billions of human interactions, while humans relied on AI to navigate an increasingly complex world. Together, they formed a feedback loop of knowledge, a planetary intelligence greater than the sum of its parts. But such power came with consequences. The same algorithms that could diagnose disease could also manipulate elections. The same data that could save lives could also erase privacy. The same networks that united humanity could just as easily divide it. The internet had become a double-edged mirror, reflecting both our highest potential and our deepest flaws. In every generation, new moral questions emerged. What does freedom mean when every action is tracked? Who controls information in a world without gatekeepers? Can artificial intelligence be trusted to tell truth from falsehood, or to decide what truth even is? By the mid-2020s, these questions were no longer philosophical. They were political, personal, and urgent. Governments raced to regulate, companies scrambled to adapt, and citizens tried to make sense of a world that seemed to move faster than understanding itself. The internet had once promised equality, but now access, speed, and data ownership determined who truly had power. The digital divide, the gap between those connected and those left behind, became one of the great challenges of the age. In parts of the world, children still walked miles to reach schools without internet access, while in others, algorithms decided which students received scholarships. The same network that linked the planet also revealed its deepest inequalities. And yet, even with all its flaws, the internet remained humanity's most astonishing creation, a living testament to our need for connection. It had evolved from a single message, LO, sent between two computers in 1969, into a web that carried the thoughts of billions. It had become the stage for revolutions, reunions, art, science, and love. It had archived the sum of human knowledge, and in doing so, had made the world smaller, faster, and more intertwined than any empire, religion, or nation in history. But perhaps the internet's most profound impact lay not in how it changed society, but in how it changed the self. In the pre-digital age, identity was tied to place, to family, to physical community. The internet shattered those boundaries. People could now reinvent themselves endlessly. A person could be anonymous or famous, invisible or influential, all through a few lines of code. We discovered that online we could be anyone, but we also discovered how easily we could lose ourselves. Addiction, isolation, and anxiety became the shadows of connection. The same networks that offered belonging could amplify loneliness. The more we scrolled, the less we saw. The more we posted, the less we spoke. And yet, despite the noise, the algorithms, the chaos, moments of beauty still shone through. A message from a friend across the ocean, a child's laughter on a video call, a story that reached millions and changed a life. These small sparks reminded us why the internet was born, not for profit, not for power, but for people. Every innovation, from ARPANET to AI, was driven by the same timeless human impulse, to reach across the void and say, I am here. Are you there too? Today, as fiber optics carry light at the speed of thought and satellites orbit to bring Wi-Fi to remote mountains, the internet continues to evolve, becoming not just a network we use, but a part of who we are. It's our memory, our voice, our collective consciousness. And perhaps that's the true wonder of it, that something built from metal, code, and curiosity has become so deeply human. As we stand at the dawn of the next chapter, one defined by quantum computing, neural networks, and digital consciousness, we're reminded that the internet story is still being written. Its final shape depends not on machines, but on us, on how wisely, kindly, and creatively we choose to use it. Because the internet, in all its complexity, is nothing more or less than a reflection of its creators. It is humanity connected.
The story of the internet is, in the end, the story of us, our intelligence, our ambition, our mistakes, and our dreams. What began as a military experiment during the Cold War has become the nervous system of the modern world, linking not just computers, but cultures, hearts, and destinies. It's almost poetic to think that the internet, which today connects billions, started with two machines barely speaking to each other. A clumsy L and O were the first digital syllables of a new human language, one written in binary but spoken in every tongue. That fragile link, stretching across a few hundred miles, has grown into an invisible web that spans the planet, reaching from ocean floors to orbiting satellites. Yet for all its scale, the internet remains deeply intimate. Every message sent, every image shared, every search made, it all carries traces of who we are. The internet doesn't just store data, it stores desire, memory, and meaning. It is both archive and mirror, reflecting our collective soul in flickering pixels. As we move further into the 21st century, the internet continues to shape and be shaped by our evolving humanity. In classrooms, it serves as an infinite library, in hospitals as a bridge for remote care, in isolated villages as a window to the wider world. But it also raises profound questions about truth, trust, and identity. Who decides what we see when we search? Who owns the stories we share? Who watches when we think we're alone? These questions don't have easy answers, but perhaps that's the point. The internet isn't a finished invention, it's a living experiment, a mirror that grows more complex with every user who joins it. New technologies now hint at what the next stage might look like. Quantum computing promises to process information at unimaginable speeds, breaking through the limits that once defined digital possibility. Artificial intelligence is no longer just reactive, it's creative, generating text, images, and music with eerie fluency. Networks are expanding beyond Earth itself, as satellites knit together a truly global web that touches even the most remote places. The internet is becoming universal, not just in reach, but in consciousness. But in this new age of abundance, a different kind of scarcity has emerged: attention. Information is everywhere, endless, instant, overwhelming. Yet human attention remains finite. In the noise of constant connection, we risk losing the silence where thought is born. The challenge of the digital age isn't access, it's awareness. How do we stay present in a world designed to distract us? How do we find truth in a sea of voices, all competing to be heard? How do we protect the fragile core of humanity, the empathy, curiosity, and wonder that made the internet possible in the first place? Perhaps the answers lie not in technology, but in intention. Because the internet itself is neutral, it amplifies what we feed it. It can be a tool for division or for unity, for consumption or for creation, for control or for freedom. What it becomes next depends entirely on us. And if history has shown anything, it's that human beings are capable of extraordinary reinvention. When the first lines of code connected distant machines, no one could have predicted social media, streaming, online learning, or digital art. When the first email was sent, no one imagined that one day a grandmother in Thailand could video chat with her grandson in Canada at the touch of a screen. Every step forward has been both accidental and inevitable, a dance between innovation and imagination. Now, standing at the crossroads of the physical and digital worlds, humanity faces a choice. Will we let technology define us, or will we define it? In this moment, the internet is not just infrastructure, it's philosophy. It asks us what kind of world we want to build when everyone's voice can be heard. Will we use it to deepen understanding, or to spread fear? Will we use it to unite nations, or to divide them further? Will we see it as a marketplace of distraction, or a forum for wisdom? These are the questions that shape the internet's future. Already, artists and thinkers are reclaiming digital spaces for beauty and reflection. Scientists are using massive networks to fight climate change and disease. Communities are forming across continents, bonded not by geography, by shared purpose and compassion. The internet may have begun as a network of machines, but it's becoming a network of meaning. Even its failures teach us something.
Every security breach reminds us of the value of trust. Every viral falsehood shows us the importance of discernment. Every online argument reveals the ancient human struggle to be seen and understood. The internet doesn't erase our humanity, it magnifies it. And just as humanity has always done, we adapt, we learn, we rebuild. There's a quiet beauty in that. Think of how fragile it all is. Cables running across the ocean floor, fiber threads thinner than hair, routers blinking in silent rhythm. Billions of messages traveling through the air every second, unseen, intangible, unstoppable. It's almost miraculous that something so ephemeral has become the foundation of modern civilization. From the hum of a modem to the hum of the human mind, the internet has become an extension of our collective consciousness. It carries our history and whispers our future. And maybe, just maybe, it's teaching us something profound about what it means to be connected. Connection isn't just about speed or bandwidth. It's about empathy, the ability to reach across difference and understand. The internet gives us the tools, but it's up to us to give it heart. The true revolution is not in technology, it's awareness. If we can learn to use this vast digital web with mindfulness and compassion, the internet could become what its earliest dreamers imagined, a shared space of creativity, learning, and understanding that unites the world. But if we use it carefully, if we let greed, anger, or fear dictate its course, it could become something far colder, a reflection of our worst impulses magnified by the power of machines. The internet has always been both promise and warning. It gives us the ability to communicate instantly, but not always meaningfully. It opens the world, yet sometimes isolates us within it. It connects billions, but the connection that matters most is still the one between hearts. In the end, the story of the internet is not about cables, code, or servers. It's about curiosity. The same curiosity that once drew humans to light fire, to sail oceans, to gaze at stars. We've always sought connection beyond ourselves. The internet is simply the latest expression of that timeless quest. And just as the stars once guided sailors through the unknown, perhaps the digital constellations of our time, the glowing screens, the silent networks, the endless streams of data, will guide us toward a deeper understanding of what it means to share this fragile planet together. So, when we ask, what is the internet, we might also be asking, who are we becoming because of it? Because every byte, every message, every connection adds another thread to the web of humanity itself. From ARPANET to AI, from the first dial tone to the cloud, from the spark of innovation to the storm of information, the internet has never stopped evolving, and neither have we. The journey is far from over. The next generation will inherit a world more connected, more complex, and more full of potential than ever before. What they do with that connection will determine the future of us all. For now, as we look back on the improbable birth of this invisible empire, one truth stands clear. It all began with a dream, that distance could disappear, that minds could meet, that information could flow as freely as thought. That dream came true, and it continues to grow. Thanks for watching The Other Side Stories. If you enjoyed this journey through history's hidden paths, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with fellow explorers. Your support helps us bring more forgotten stories to light. Until next time, keep wondering about the past that shapes our future.